Just give us the 5, 4, 3, 2.
Hey everyone, my name is Luis Diaz and welcome to Challenging the Fifth Level podcast, first ever episode.
Yeah.
I'm here with David Solomon.
Nice to meet you. Nice to see you. Let's try it again, please. Start from the top, please.
Start from the top.
Here we go.
Hey everyone, I'm Luis Diaz. Welcome to Challenging the Fifth Level podcast, our first and initial episode. I'm here with David Solomon.
Luis, it's great seeing you again.
You too. In case, people don't know, I am now quasi-based out of Florida, and we're in sunny Montreal, not really. So we decided to join forces here in Montreal to do this wonderful project.
Absolutely. And I'm based here in Montreal, David Solomon here in Montreal. And I got to tell you, one of the incredible things that Luis and I, we've been talking for years. It's incredible what it's like to be a business owner, CEO. Today with technology, market trends, you name it, it's lonely at the top.
It's very lonely at the top, and that transcends borders and industries.
Absolutely. And the problem is, who do you talk to? Who can you confide in? Where can you get great information? We know all the social channels and whatever is full of garbage, but there's also some really good stuff. So we sat down and we said, hey, we should do a podcast based on our experiences, based on what we've seen over our years of experience. And I did it on purpose because I don't want to tell people how many years we've been doing this. But in reality, yeah, right. But between not only just in the different industries we've been, but how many different countries we've done business in,
absolutely,
and what we find the commonalities. And so the idea of the challenging the fifth level, the whole idea is the fifth level is that pinnacle, that lonely seat at the top of the chain where you're alone and you're there with your thoughts, wondering, what do I do? How do I do it? How do I scale my company? What can we do? And so we decided that that's what our podcast will be about, is sharing our experiences with you in a variety of different themes over the course of the next few podcasts.
Absolutely. And I think that you bring up a couple of great points, because the number one challenge that I see that business people today run into is they think that success means being popular and having friends and living that high life, or that social media,
or worse,
life.
It's all about the money. The worst part for a lot of these people is that success comes in the form of cash. That's not success.
No, it is not.
And what we've seen, and especially, Luis, I don't know about you, but I started my own business, and I'm consulting now for growth. And one of the things that I find fascinating, and I talk to a lot of SMB, small to mid-sized business owners, they want to grow. 93% of companies today never go north of $1 million in revenue. It's an incredible number to believe that only 7% will do more than $1 million.
Or last more than 3 years.
10 years is an insane number. Like if you last 10 years, I was joking with somebody the other day. I said, owning and running your own business is like marriage. Your divorce rate is almost as bad as your failure rate in business. Can you last the first year? Can you last 3 years? Can you last 10 years? Businesses don't. And the challenges are enormous. Everybody has aspirations for growth. How do they grow? And I think one of the, for today, I want to talk about what is the growth mindset? Like what, in your opinion, Luis, let's start from the beginning. We've talked about the growth mindset. How should a business owner, in your opinion, start thinking today about growing their business?
Well, I think it's a very challenging question, because it's kind of like those absolute answer type questions that you'll ask, like, what do you think of the environment? Oh, we need to save the environment. But are you willing to take or do the challenges, like get an electric car and, recycle and compost and all these things? And they're like, oh my God, that's a lot of work. Well, that's kind of the same mindset and the challenges that business owners encounter on a day-to-day basis, because everybody wants to grow, but not everybody is ready to grow. And not everybody has that mindset. Yes, we can think of, visualizing what I want to do and visualizing my next 3 months, my next 6 months, my next year, my next 10 years. I can visualize my retirement. But I do believe that a lot of leaders are disconnected with what it actually takes. And I've seen this because quite recently we've seen a trend of these C-suite clubs, I want to call them. And these C-suite clubs are very interesting. I actually was in one last year, where it was C-suite for marketing and communications. And we got to sit down with a lot of CMOs, chief marketing officers, and chief communications officers, and discuss problems that are very unique to a chief, to a C-suite. I mean, a manager has their own challenges, a director has their own challenges, but we tend to not realize that at a C-suite level, challenges are completely different. The type of visualization you have to have is completely different. And the problem there is that there is no, I want to call it support network. There is not that much information out there. A lot of people will treat it as state secret. A lot of people will say, well, I just don't have time to share. And I guess we're just talking just before going on air, how, a lot of people consider it as zero-sum game where if you're winning, I'm losing.
Right.
So they're not up for the dialogue. So, going back to your point, I do believe that the visualization and the growth mindset is a very challenging decision to make as a business owner, because you do have to deconstruct everything you do know in order to start implementing what I call the rafters of success.
So, we just dove into this podcast, but the people who are listening right now are probably going, who the hell is Luis Diaz and who are David Solomon? What's their background? Because you just dove into talking about marketing. Why don't you share a few minutes, like, what's your background and what makes you an expert in this area?
Thank you. Well, I am a strategic communications and strategic planning specialist. Been doing this for the better part of amount of years.
You can share the number. It's okay. It's all good.
So I've been doing this for about 18 years now. Started in the political world. So did a lot of crisis management, strategic communications at the Canadian federal level, Canadian provincial level. I did work for a bit at the United Nations in New York and in Europe as well, in The Hague, which was very fun. And then transitioned into my own consulting life, where then I decided, hey, I have enough clients that I should actually make it a full-time business, hired staff, and now run two what I like to call successful companies. One of them in software as a service, and the other one in crises and strategic planning operations. When I'm not, if I didn't have enough to do in my life, when I'm not doing these things, I do teach at McGill University, the Harvard of Canada, as we like.
Please don't use that. I don't know if you want to call it like that, but let's go to that. We'll get into the politics of that.
But so I've been teaching there for about, I'm entering my 9th year now. Nice. And I teach an assortment of classes, all revolving in the digital marketing space, the strategic communications, and the political communications fields at the graduate level.
Sweet.
David, what about you?
So,
Mr. Man of Mystery.
Master Man of Mystery. Well, listen, I'm going to admit I've been at this game for over 30 years. And I started in sales and I loved it. And I was really in two industries, toys and then in advertising. Toys was really cool because for me, what I loved about the toy industry is not only did I learn about the strategic plans of all the retailers that I had to deal with in Canada, not only did I deal with, understanding our strategic plan as a company that wanted to grow as a manufacturer, but here I was dealing not only in Canada, United States, UK, the world. I mean, I was an export manager at the age of 28 years old. I knew nothing about cross cultures. I knew nothing about selling into other markets. And somehow I learned how to sell to Latin America as I did into Middle East, as I did into Asia, into Europe. And it was a blast. For 12 more years, then I was in the advertising business, traditional advertising, let's call it, newspaper business. And again, I was working with a lot of small to mid-sized businesses, even large corporations, advertising agencies, understanding what they want to achieve, what was their growth ideology, what was what are they looking for? Because at the end of the day, they needed to communicate a message to their client base. And we had to guide them. We had to consult with them. Even though we were a local paper, we had a great time, talking to these customers, helping them grow. So that was my first 20 years of my life. And then I took a crazy break and went back to get my MBA at the age of 42. The old man at McGill, you talk about McGill, right? So the old man at McGill goes back to get his MBA. And I'm blown away how much I fell in love with strategic planning. Didn't even realize how much I loved the idea of developing growth plans for companies. I was doing it without knowing I was doing it. Now I learned the structures. Now I understood the frameworks, and now I'm in love with it. So 2 things occurred. One, when I finished, I spent the next 10 odd years in technology, working with small businesses, developing their strategic plans, helping to grow their businesses. And then McGill offers me to teach sales strategy, growth strategy to MBAs. And I was floored, and I didn't want to do this. So you're at 9 years, I'm at 7 years of teaching to MBA students all about strategic growth planning. And it's incredible how we created MBA students learning every aspect of the business world except for revenue generation. It's mind-boggling, and how few universities in North America teach revenue generation.
I agree.
Accounting, finance, marketing, communications,
Operations.
strategy, operations, but revenue generation is almost a misnomer. So I've been having fun doing this, and I had an epiphany this past May, where I wanted to launch my own strategic growth plan consulting firm, and that's what I've been doing ever since, and having a blast doing it. And so when we were talking about this podcast, you got my attention, because really the biggest challenge, and you talk about from a marketing point of view, my conversations with a lot of CEOs and business owners is, how do we grow the business profitably? They don't use the word profitably. They should, but they say, I want to grow my business. I want to sell more. Okay, well, what else do you need to do? And this goes back to the whole conversation of the growth mindset. A business owner cannot afford to be silo thinking. Not one department. You can't just think sales or only marketing or only operations. I find it mind-boggling how many business owners just spend too much time talking about what they're most comfortable in. And if you're an engineering mindset, then operations is where you're going to focus on. And if you're an accountant mindset, then you're going to talk finance. You can't. The growth mindset for a business owner has to be way more holistic. And if it can't be holistic because they are unable or they struggle, whatever, the growth mindset now has to be, brought down to your team, your senior team. Do you have the right team around you who can challenge you, who can help you to grow the business, who can look to the future, understand your vision, and bring you to that next level? A lot of these business owners say, no, I want people that I'm comfortable with to work with. And that's where the growth mindset is kind of challenged. So, I sat at a conference, and I heard somebody was talking about growing the business and how to grow the business and whatever. And I just raised my hand and I said, yeah, but what about, it's great to say, oh, this is how you're going to grow, but you don't take into account every aspect of the business. Every time you grow, there's an impact on the business. So if you're going to impact the business, are you prepared for that next level? Because taking a company from 1 to 2 million doesn't sound like a lot. It's 1 to 2. It's big.
It's massive. And getting to your first million for a lot of companies is the biggest challenge.
Absolutely.
And it's a lot of sleepless nights. It's a lot of, the number one challenges that I hear of with a lot of business owners is things like payroll.
Oh boy.
Every 2 weeks, it's a nightmare, payroll. And then, if you're in Quebec versus in the States, you have enormous amounts of deductions at source and sales tax and all these other things that just make it that much more challenging. And so one of the biggest things that I've always noticed with a lot of companies, it's really funny, consulted a company, and they said that they were happy with the size that they were. They didn't want to grow anymore. They just wanted solid, continuous partners.
I've heard that a lot.
And I said, why don't you want to grow? And they said, because anything that I do between now and an X number, I'm just working for the government.
Correct.
Because I need to get an admin staff that's going to manage full-time the amount of communications and sales tax and this and that and the other, that I will not benefit from it. So that growing pain, like I say, the juice is not worth the squeeze. They're happy where they are.
Yeah, but I think that's where your growth mindset is flawed.
Correct.
And I think that what ends up happening is the belief is the tax man is coming to grab the money. When in reality, if it's structured right and you don't look at, this is why I go back to that holistic thinking. Are your operational processes efficient in such a way that you can optimize it for growth? Can you, do you have the right staff in place, the HR? Can you, do you have, if you have enough funding, you can actually take it to another level. When I hear business owners talking about, I'm working for the tax man, you don't understand growth.
And they haven't optimized for growth.
No, they're not. And I think that there's a comfort zone also. Like, think about it from this perspective. And I'll ask you this question. How many business owners have you heard are comfortable there? They're afraid of growing. They're comfortable. How many times have you heard is, I don't want to grow have you ever heard any business because I don't know how?
I don't know if I've ever heard of that specific example. What I have heard is companies say, I don't want to grow because I'm happy with the clients. If I open up my portfolio, I run the risk of clients not paying me, or I run the risk of biting too big of a bite or taking too big of a bite that I can't chew. And so because of that, I may fall back on taxes or behind on other stuff, and I need to bring a whole other level of support team, and that's an extra level of cost. That fear of the unknown, I have seen enough companies to say, no, you know what, I am happy where I am. And as long as I meet this number, I will continue to do so, because for me, it's slow and steady.
But then they're not really wanting to grow.
So that's the funny part, because growing is such a misnomer. Everybody wants to grow. It's like everybody wants to lose weight, or everybody wants to get healthy, but they don't understand the implications of making that decision. And I think that that's the biggest challenge of a CEO and or anybody at the C-suite level, is taking decisions that are bigger than the department. They apply to the whole business. Mm-hmm. And fighting that good fight is the big challenge. I think that's where, you have to be not only a strategist, but your own cheerleader, because you have to convince your staff. And then you have to maybe make some really serious decisions. Is the right staff that's going to get me there? I see this all the time in sports. In Montreal, we have some great teams, and then we have some not so great teams. And then we have some great teams that have not so good times. And a lot of times we're talking about the restructuring. Let's restructure the Habs, or let's restructure this, or restructure that. And I find that a lot of times the challenge is your team enough to bring you to the championship?
I think that there are a lot of people, their businesses, why I don't think they have the right growth mindset is because they're happy to play.
Yeah.
They're not happy to win.
They're happy to be in the game.
They're happy to be in the game. They've gotten into this business because, hey, let's be real, right?
I don't work for somebody.
I don't work for somebody. I'm independent. I can set my own hours. All kinds of these mythologies, let's call it, or misnomers, misbeliefs, whatever you want to call it. Having the right growth mindset is, first of all, it starts with your vision. Where do you want to take the company? Where are we going? And I know we'll talk about this in future podcasts, but where do you want to go? If you're happy being $1 million company and that's what you want to do, congratulations, stay there, no problem. But you know that not growing is declining.
Of course.
There's no such a thing as flat.
Let's put it this way. You're making $100,000 this year. In 2023, there was 8% inflation. So if you revenued 100,000, right. I'm keeping simple math. If you revenued 100,000 in 2023 and 100,000 in 2022, well, you actually lost 8% of your revenue in 2023.
More or less. And I think that what people also don't understand is when you're looking at the path, when you're looking at the mindset, yeah, you're alone. No, you're not. Unless you're a solopreneur. If you're a solopreneur, you have to find guidance, whatever. But there's so many people around you who can help you. And one of the mindsets that prevent people from growing is bringing in outside help. They'll rely on their accountant, their lawyer sometimes to give them business advice. Lawyers, how many lawyers do you know are really good at business? How many lawyers have run a business? How many accountants have run a business? They're not. Accountants like to look at the past. Accountants will give you a past, the historical reflection. They might be able to help you predict the future numerically, but do they understand the machinations, if you will, of grow? No, they don't.
They probably don't, because they're in a very linear business. I'll never have a very, very nice and short anecdote on that, where I was part of a networking group where one of the sort of the senior people in the group was an accountant, and somebody wanted to join the club or the association, the group, and they were asking the right questions. They're like, listen, it's an investment, money, time, dedication, effort. Why should I join this group? And this person turns around and asks the accountant of the group, why did you join? You're part of the senior leadership. Why did you join? What do you get out of it, and why are you involved? And the answer was surprising to me. And the answer was, I joined this group because I wanted to meet some people, but then I met some great people, and it gets me out of bed in the morning, and it gives me something to do. And it basically has been added to my routine. Needless to say, this new candidate didn't join the group because they said, this is not the mindset I'm looking for. They are not necessarily trying to grow. So the long story short on that was the mindset wasn't there. They were getting regular business. And I find that one of the interesting things, like you said, of your mindset is, even if you're a solopreneur, you do have to set your groundwork for success. So I'm based out of Florida now. And so one of the things that I've noticed over there is people are not very scared of competition because of the sheer amount of population.
Right.
And so, if anything, I was having a very enlightening conversation with a gentleman who owns a pool company, and he was saying something along the lines of, I have enough business. If somebody doesn't want to pay my prices, that's perfectly fine.
Right.
I'm sure they'll find somebody else, and I will find somebody else.
Sure.
That in itself was very refreshing, because that talks about their core values.
But that's an excellent mindset.
It's a great mindset, which is something that is very challenging, and I find it a little bit of a educational moment, let's put it that way, particularly for businesses across the border.
Right.
I think that that's something that is very important to have, because business is not a zero-sum game. There is always enough business to go around. It's just a matter of setting the groundwork to understand what path you want to take.
You know, when you were talking about that networking person and you know, coming in and looking for, you know, to grow and what have you, this is the mindset where, you know, someone, when I was, you know, wanting to launch my business, and they said, it wasn't about, you know, your mindset is to grow your company. Never be comfortable.
Never.
You know, I was like, what do you mean never be comfortable? He's like, yeah, no, listen to me carefully. The day you're comfortable, retire. Get out of it. Don't do this. He said, every day there's a challenge. Every day there's a new challenge. And if you suddenly get comfortable, you get complacent, and then you don't grow. And the scariest part was, and I mean, look, when I launched this, my business was my first really opportunity to launch my own one. You know, there were a lot of sleepless nights. And I start to feel the sweats, if you will, of a business owner, and the concerns and what have you, and the cash flow, you know, challenges and the employment, and all these things. And I have yet to be comfortable. And so for me today, every day I challenge myself. What can I learn? What's the new obstacle? What more can I do? And it's really a reflection. And I think that as a business owner, that's what you got to do in your company. Now, listen, I will tell you today, look, you need a strategic growth plan, and you'll tell them you need this plan. And absolutely. And that's, they all need it. But in reality today, I tell business owners, get off your chair. Get out of your office. Go visit your customers.
Contact sport.
Go visit your suppliers. Go network. Go find out what's going on out there. Because the world isn't static. 10 minutes ago, nobody talked about AI, or at least and now AI is everywhere. If you're not thinking AI is part of your business for tomorrow, then you're comfortable. And I mean, that's just one example. You know, if you're right now a manufacturer and you're bringing in goods from overseas, and I don't know when you're listening to this podcast, folks, but I'm hoping that the war, you know, will be over in the Middle East, but the Red Sea, is closed. Your cost of shipping has just gone up. What are you going to do? The Panama Canal, the water is too low. Boats aren't crossing through there either. There's a problem around the world in shipping. We're going to have a supply chain problem. Are you ready? Are you prepared? Because this is what I'm talking about. You got to be thinking all the time, what ifs. You're going to think about, what else can I learn? How else can I help my company? Because like I said, if you don't grow, you decline.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that one of the biggest things that I'd like to highlight on this is, as a very busy CEO of a company of 1 or 1,000, I think that the biggest challenge is finding the time and understanding the value of the inanimate and the abstract. I find that a lot of people are willing to pay for, I like to use the example, they're willing to pay for the flyer, not the idea of the design in the flyer or the graphic design of the flyer. They're willing to pay for the print of the flyer. And I think that that's one of the biggest challenges as well, is that, we are sometimes so close to the light or so close to the fire that we're blinded by the fire, and we don't understand what the art of the possible is. One of the things that have led, at least in my side of the business world, to success is the multidisciplinary approach that we've brought to the market. Having worked in politics and aviation and IT and technology, fintech, prop tech, all these fields that I have worked in, for example, means that I'm able to come up with some out-of-the-box solutions that other people would have never imagined. I think a great example is the car industry uses this all the time. The car industry keeps on developing and innovating, and they keep on innovating by bringing people from fashion, bringing people from health technology, bringing people from aviation. Saab was a great story until it wasn't, but Saab started with planes and jets, and then it went to cars. And then Ford, for example, brings people from fashion and start putting intricate details into their cars that make for a big difference in the experience. So at the end of the day, just because you've always done the same thing doesn't mean that you should continue, doesn't mean that somebody cannot bring you some perspective. When it comes to the strategic planning side of things, the beautiful thing is that at times strategic planners can clear the noise. And make it much easier to focus. I find that that's always a challenge of C-suite, but focus.
But keep in mind, strategic planning is all about a direction.
Absolutely.
And listen, we're going to wrap up this podcast really soon, but like one of the things you talked about the
already.
Oh man, yeah, I know. You talked about the internal part. What people have to remember, there's an acronym we got back. Remember one of those acronyms we got at the MBA called PESTEL, PESTEL.
Oh, yes.
And it really, when you're looking for those trends, because people look at it as opportunities and threats, and it's really not. This is a trend. What's happening in the political world? Economics, social, technological, environmental, legal. What's going on? Maybe AI today isn't in your industry. It is tomorrow. Maybe something, the government passed a law and you're like, oh, hey, there's a problem I can solve, but it's not that is the growth mindset. It's not just looking internally, like you said, but also looking externally. I think we got to wrap this up.
I think we do. I think that in the next couple of podcasts, we have quite a bit of subjects coming up. They're going to be very interesting. So we do hope you'll join us, and we do hope that you loved our first take on this beautiful new challenge, as I like to call. And we're looking forward to continuing to have you. Tell all your friends we're here for the whole season. So we look forward to seeing you at the next podcast.
Folks, really check us out on social media, YouTube, all the major channels. Like us, share. We want your feedback. So please send us any comments that you have. We'd love to hear about it. And then maybe we'll even address it in a future podcast.
Absolutely. And so in the comments, you'll also see, a little bit of information on us, our LinkedIn's, and our company site, so that you can follow, like, share, and ask questions. Absolutely. So listen, you're not alone out there. Join us, and hopefully we can bring some light to that path that sometimes can be lonely, but shouldn't be.